I've avoided doing a video about this because a lot of my friends are MRAs, and a lot of what they say is true and is legitimate, but I think they exaggerate the problem. Like, I understand that men are treated as second-class citizens in Western society, but then again, so are blacks, Hispanics, Arabs. It's more so a game. It's a sick game of who we're going to discriminate when and where. And there's never really a concrete way to tell, which in turn makes it near impossible to stop. Because you don't know what it's going to be that's going to trigger people's bigotries and hypocrisy and bending of the law to their own whim. But what I'm saying here is that, men should not just avoid women entirely and not form meaningful relationships and bonds with them, because, let's face it, you're not going to find many people in life you can trust. Now, mind you, you don't need to get married in order to do this. I'm not advocating people go out and get married and like it's some important thing, because it isn't. You can have kids without marriage, and once you go beyond that boundary that you somehow need to be married in order to bear children and be a responsible adult, you'll be a lot better off. I mean, some people need marriage. Some people are raised in a Christian household, and subconsciously they cannot deviate from that. It's conditioning. And unfortunately, sometimes you're going to have to, throw them a bone. Like, my girlfriend, she wants to get married, and, I want to marry her too, in the sense that I know that I love her and that I would do anything for her, and if that will make her happy, okay. But I don't personally see the value in marriage. And I don't want to say that just outright because I don't want to hurt her feelings. I don't want her to think that, somehow I think less of her, or I think less of our relationship because of it, or anything like that. But I do understand the implications of marriage, and there's no need for it. There's no need for legal documentation that basically puts me in a bind, because as a man, I'm always treated as a rapist or a thug or something preemptively. Nor should either of us be under this contract that, if we do something wrong, our kids get taken away or some shit. But that could happen anyway. Child Services could take our kids with or without a marriage license. And the fact is, I really wouldn't care if they did anyway, because I personally don't believe in a parenting household. I don't believe in the class hierarchy of a family union. So, essentially, you go ahead and fucking take them, But I would raise my kids to appreciate knowledge and to appreciate curiosity, discovery, loyalty, honesty, but none of that has anything to do with hierarchies. It has nothing to do with me being their father. I've been through more than them. I've seen more, I've dealt with more, and I'm going to use whatever knowledge I have to equip them with things that they will need to defend themselves, because everybody's after them. So, in some ways, everyone understands that, but the problem is, you cannot be very different in this Western society without people coming against you. I cannot just go out in the street and say that, marriage is completely worthless, and so is the entire family structure. We should not have families. We should simply be people, and people teach other people, and people help out other people, and people care about other people, and that's fucking it. And, the whole sex thing. Sex is so destructive. It should be avoided at all costs, only for procreation. That is something you will never hear. You will never hear the left talk about how sex should only be for procreation because of the insinuations of it, because of the moral and emotional implications of attachment and of, relationships and shit. And so that's why I'm very careful about how I treat Samantha, because I care about her. I care about her psychological health. So I don't want to do anything that would be detrimental to that. However, I think completely different from her because not so much that I was raised differently, but because I grew up in a very different environment and I saw the world in a very different perspective. So in turn, it's like trying to explain things to a two-dimensional being when you're three-dimensional. It isn't going to work very well. The only thing is that her trust in me is so deep that she knows I would never do anything to specifically harm her or to just think about myself. She knows I'm not a selfish person, but she knows that I'm a very different person. And unfortunately, that can come at odds with her feelings and her personal growth, and I'm aware of that. What I'm trying to say here is that, just because women sometimes manipulate men and take advantage of them, I've been taken advantage of myself because I wasn't always this way, does not necessarily mean that that's what women's main goal is. And I'm sure MRAs understand that, but they just say to, avoid women, and that women are the problem, and that women just don't understand, and shit like that. I don't believe that. Because if that were the case, women would be using their female powers more constructively. I imagine if I was a woman, I would not be trying to get revenge on my boyfriend or my husband. I would be accusing my employer of raping me. That way, he could have to write me a paycheck or some shit because of having to work a grueling ass job that I hate. It would stand to reason that if women really understood their social status, that they would be using it for far more than just messing with some fucking guy out on the street. She wouldn't form this bond with you just to have leverage over you. For that matter, she could just have leverage over any male in a much better position than you are. So it's stupid. It's stupid to think that, women are like this gun just waiting to be triggered. And I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that because I don't put myself in that paranoid state. The fact is, whether or not a woman does manipulate me makes no difference because I will just manipulate them back. I know I'm at a disadvantage because I'm a male, but you know what? I'm at a disadvantage anyway because of all sorts of other factors. The biggest factor being poverty. There is nothing worse in life than being poor. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what age you are, what gender you are. The poor are always the ones to suffer most of all. All this shit about racism and sexism and phobias of all sorts are nothing compared to the fact that if you're poor, you ain't going to get dick out of life. It's just that simple. The poor are always the first to suffer because the rich just don't care. The rich like using their labor for their own benefit. That's the people manipulating us most of all. Not women, not, the whitey. Even though the white culture is perverted and corrupt, the fact is that it is capitalism. It is the capital owners making all this shit worthwhile. It's the capital owners that made all of this. All of the problems. Whether it be because you're a man and divorce rates are 50% and you have to give up half your shit. That's capitalism. The fact that you're a woman and you can't, get past that glass ceiling, and no matter how hard you work, you're considered inferior in quality. That's capitalism. The fact that you are bound to these social etiquettes, but then meanwhile someone's sucking a dick on some gay parade, and showing his bare naked hairy ass, but you're expected to get a job and to get married and have a few kids and settle down. That's fucking capitalism. All this insanity, all this doublespeak is fucking capitalism. That's what I'm trying to say here. I don't have time to worry about all the other shit because I know it all comes back to the same problem. I know when you get right down to it, it's because of fucking capital ownership. The fact is, if I didn't have to work so hard to have a house, to have a job, to have, things, I would not have to worry about a woman divorcing me. I should be able to live pretty decently without having to bust my ass. If housing was provided for, if food stamps were more common, if, there were government regulations to make sure everyone had something they could do and that they would help them find a job, then it wouldn't fucking matter. Because I'm not saying that I would automatically be everything I wanted to be. I would be an astronaut. I'd be an attorney. No. What I'm saying is my life would be pretty stable. And I wouldn't have to worry about all this other bullshit. So, you're aiming at the wrong problem. Your anger is misdirected. Because, the only reason women can manipulate your disadvantage in society is because of the capital owners that gave you a disadvantage to begin with. And even if you weren't socially disadvantaged, even if there wasn't this presumption that men are rapists and thugs and bullies and just sociopaths or whatever, the fact is you would still have to work and shit, and you could lose it at any moment. Your house could fucking burn down, and everything you work so hard for is gone, because you shouldn't have to work for your fucking house, and your food on your plate, and, water to drink and shower with. You shouldn't have to work for all of that like you're a goddamn slave. It should just be provided for, because you're a human being. You have rights. And by cooperating with society and using your skills or just your labor, if you're not a skilled person, to help carry society forward and to keep this whole thing going, that should be enough. You've done your part. Now you get to live comfortably until you die at like 80 and just rot in the ground. You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's my answer to this whole conundrum, is that you work, you don't stab people, you're entitled. You're entitled to it all. You're entitled to food, you're entitled to board, you're entitled to, getting your dick sucked, you're entitled to having all your basic needs met, because, you work, and you do shit, and you carry this shit forward. You keep society running. We are like building blocks. And whether you be at the bottom or at the top, the fact is, none of it could exist without every single block. So, people need to appreciate you more, regardless of where you are in life, regardless of your gender or your race or your social status, regardless of anything. The fact is, if you work, or at least if you're trying to work, the fact is, if you are not just going out there like Columbine and shooting up people, you're contributing, and therefore you should be entitled to basic human rights. That's by no means a radical position, but I guess it is when you're surrounded by fucking serial killers and murderous sociopathic scum like the capital owners and their Uncle Tom kiss asses that are so brainwashed and so fucking ignorant that they'll go along with anything. So that's all.